Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 12 of the anime series Gangsta. For all intents and purposes, the season 1 finale, and as of the time of this recording, I haven't heard any official announcements for season 2, but hopefully that will be a thing. If not, by the time this video is up sometime shortly, we can expect a continuation of this story, because I'll be chomping at the bit for it, quite frankly. And I have to say, going into this finale episode, I was glad that it was much more of a reprieve from the previous, where around every corner it was explosions and blood being spilled, just murderous from beginning to end. It was wreaking all kinds of havoc, and I was just very happy that this episode, though it carries a lot of emotion with it, and it had its own actiony elements between specifically Stryker and Warwick respectively, which very much kind of paralleled aspects of the fights you saw between Vicious and Spike Spiegel from Cowboy Bebop, you know, especially going out the window. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but I felt like this episode was much more of a breather, much more of a calmer episode, even though it did have the weighty elements and the emotional elements and those actiony elements. And very much was there a sense of closure for now, for a time, while also hinting at the future, the continuation of this story, and just how seemingly stacked up those chips are going to be against our protagonists, really. We begin very interestingly with Alex finally waking from her reverie, but not before having sort of a hallucinogenic dream. You know, she's seeing visions of her former pimp. She's seeing visions of Nico, apparently wounded. At least that was my estimation of it. And it seems to confuse the hell out of her as much as it does me, the viewer, because she's suddenly calling back on aspects of her parents. You know, I had taken it for granted that she was probably orphaned with her brother, had been taking care of him, raising him, and we see that in fact her mother was murdered by apparently a tag. She was maybe kidnapped, stolen, used for whatever ends, whatever purposes, maybe falling right in line with what Alex would eventually do. I don't exactly know. But we see that her father was left in mourning and mulling over those bastards who took his wife, if it weren't for them, if it weren't for those tags. And that very much spells an interesting equilibrium in the sort of story, how everything is scoping out, you know, with anti-tags and the tags themselves and people trying to preserve their lives as well as protect them, and people out and out just hunting them and all that kind of stuff, all those dynamics. And Alex has been very much a through point, a window through which we are seeing this world, but now we have shades and colors of maybe there being more to even her own perspective. Maybe she has a very personal sort of link to all of this. And it seems, you know, I don't know whether it's a product of her hallucinogenic effects from the drug and being under stress, you know, relapsing, as she was warned by Dr. Theo could happen. But she's having these visions of Nico, and she's actually believing she may have met him before. I'm assuming in previous events to the actual unfolding of this series. And that to me is utmost compelling because, you know, did they have a negative run-in? Was he the tag who apparently raped her as per her vision? She, you know, we see that basically he's keeping vigil by her bedside very much for her well-being, to keep an eye on her. He has coffee at the ready when she wakes up out of him, when she snaps to. And she puts it to him, have we met before? And it's just, I find that absolutely compelling, that question, because there's so much of the events previous to this we're not familiar with, and they're very much using the flashbacks and everything to flesh more of those elements out as we go along. And so it's like, was there something there? I don't know. He seems to react to her question, but then of course he's also reacting because somehow he has a sense that some of the people from Club Bastard have showed up. They're worried about, you know, like Galahad has gone missing or he hasn't returned, whatever it is. Will he take up, you know, basically arms as sort of the bouncer protector of Loretta Cristiano and everything like that? And he agrees. She wants to go with him because, of course, she's still very much concerned. She was out, you know, when Loretta took off, and what happened to the baby in the aftermath. We found out they found it a home in the previous episode. But he's like, no, you stay here. And she even follows him down the steps, but she can only sort of recoil under the weight of not only, I find it interesting that the entirety of this episode is clouded over with this rain, you know, and it coincides with the tumultuous emotions, the stormy emotions, if you will, that are rocking the tepid waters of her emotions and her recollections that she can't make sense of. But it also is spelling over the dark cloud that has now washed over this particular city, and all the darkness and the lightning strikes, if you will, that the hunters are blasting through it, you know. And so, of course, when we get to Club Bastard, we see that Granny Joel is reprimanding Marco and blaming him because apparently he was one of the Esmonets at one point, and it's these guys, these you know, sort of super normal humans, I guess, is what I take from it. They have the abilities, but they don't succumb to, you know, the sort of equating, you know, aspects of utilizing that power. They don't have anything that diminishes their capacity. They don't have sort of the cutoff and everything like that. They can just do whatever they want, you know, willy-nilly. Because he was part of this group and he knows that Stryker is as bloodthirsty as he is, he can only assume that Constance's disappearance has to do with that, to do with his own history. And Joel is blaming him for this because apparently he promised her, you know, in a sense that he would protect Connie. You know, now she very rightfully, I think, feels as though that promise was a lie, or at least, you know, not that Marco lied to her knowingly, but that's her estimation of it in a sense, because he should have had the forethought to know this could still erupt again. And it very much has. It's vomited itself all over the lives of these people, and now we don't know what the fate of Connie is. And it just is heartbreaking as Nico stops her from, you know, bashing him with the cane, and then he chases after her out in the rain. And she very much, too, is shedding tears, and she's saying when she lost, you know, her son and daughter-in-law or whatever it was, you know, Connie's parents, there was never even any bodies. There were no remnants. There was nothing that they could bury. There was nothing they could, you know, erect basically a gravestone for. And even if it's only just an ear or just an eyeball or just something, she wants to be able to lay her eyes, as elderly as they are, as long for the wind as they are, on her granddaughter once more. And it just broke my ever-loving heart because I don't know what happened to her, and I can only assume that it's the worst, you know. As we see a brief shot of Erica and Mikhail playing with a body, it's like, I hope that's not Connie. You know, and that coincides with Yang and Deli's still looking, taking this girl Heather along for the ride, looking for Erica, trying to pinpoint where her last location was. And as he's looking up to the sky, this rainy sky, there across rooftops go Erica and Mikhail respectively. And again, the threads of things to come. Warwick is at Monroe's joint, and of course this is where Stryker intervenes. He wants to get at Monroe, and it's very much, you're still under the impression what's going on here, because you know Ivan was with Monroe last and he seemed to be pulling his gun on him, but very much are we seeing in a fleeting sort of manner that it seems like Monroe and Ivan may be working in tandem. It doesn't look like captor and you know, capturee, if you will, hostage. It seems like he's going along willingly, and Warwick's own sort of, you know, piecing together the fact that every time they were jumped, every time Monroe was attacked by Doug, by all these other various means, Ivan was always integral to that plot. And of course, Miles, the main sort of old guy, as Warwick calls him, guard of Monroe, they're both piecing it together, and they're both like wide-eyed, like, how didn't we see this coming? How didn't we put this together? And this is when Stryker shows up. Of course, Monroe and Ivan have skirted away. They are nowhere to be found. And the battle ensues, and Warwick realizes as Stryker has him pinned, he's looking for Monroe, but he's not looking for him like, I'm going to take him out. I'm going to take him hostage. There seems to be another modus operandi behind Stryker's actions. And as I say, I absolutely loved the very cunning, you know, sort of stratagem that Warwick had put together, hiding outside the window, Miles behind the desk. They had guns over the door, you know, to basically take Stryker out. Of course, none of this works because he's got those super senses and everything, and he ends up stabbing Warwick. And it looked like Warwick had actually gotten some downers into Stryker's neck. Correct me if I'm wrong, if that's not what that was. But it just was absolutely compelling that even at that moment, he tosses Warwick out the window very much again like the very first confrontation between Vicious and Spike Spiegel and Cowboy Bebop, when he throws Spike out the sort of church stained glass window and he's falling, Spike is falling, that is to say, and Warwick is very much in that position. And because of the shades of Bebop, because of just the monumental back and forth that's going through the struggle of these two characters, and how outmatched in strength, in prowess, in cunning Warwick is, being a normal, even with his own abilities, there's only so much he can do. And I found it absolutely mind-boggling that Nina, she's like, is she psychic or something like that? Because this is now the second or third time she knows when Warwick is either being affected or he's on his way or he's been wounded. She's like, her eyes are wide. She tells Theo something's happened to Warwick. She doesn't say what. You're left to wonder, did they just kill him? Stuff like that. But I mean, how does she know? How does she have such like a lightning blast, cut and dry sense of what's happening to him as this happens? I don't know. It was just absolutely captivating. And we very much leave off with some of these things. Loretta is basically getting apparently undressed and then redressed in front of Marco and all her guards because she's going to take up the cause of finding Constance. She's, appreciative of all the years Marco has spent, turned his life around to affect for the better the lives of Twilights in the Cristiano equivalent of, this sort of Underground Railroad thing that they've been doing for the Twilights. And so now Loretta wants, the only best way she can think to thank him and show that appreciation is to take up the cause, take up arms, hunt down Connie, find out what her fate is, whatever that will be. And, we leave with Nico just going very much back to the root of his entire concept of all of this, that there's no point to it. There's no point. There's no point in protecting Twilights because there's always going to be people out there gunning for us, his own kind, for people like him, even if he is off on his own. We see a compassionate human being, but we see a human being twisted by the fate of the surroundings he finds himself in. He already lost somebody. He just sees people being lost left, right, and center. No matter what he tries to do, he's trying very much to be protective of Alex because, at least to his estimation, she doesn't belong in the mix. She never chanced to belong in this Twilight versus anti-Twilight thing going on, this chess game going on. This chess game of explosions and just contempt and, all these things that are going on. And yet with those hallucinogenic visions or those dreamlike visions, those recollections of her past, do we have the compelling question? Maybe is it that she is much more a part of this than we ever before expected? Maybe she's not merely the window through which we, the viewers, see, but maybe there's more tainting her vision of the overall outcome. It's very interesting that even with her mixed emotions, with her uncertainty as to whether she's met Nico before, we see her taking up the sign language. We see her trying to understand and get to know him. Maybe there is a subconscious drive, as an impetus to that. Maybe it's because she subconsciously recognizes him. And is it that she wants to understand the monster that may have affected her family for the negative? Is it that she wants to understand on a human level people, a whole, group of people that she can't necessarily wrap her mind around? And through her interactions with Nico, through her relationship with him, maybe she'll be the better for it. Maybe she'll be able to grow and evolve her own perspective on Twilights and tags, even as we see how bloodthirsty some of them can be, and even as we see there are entire movements of people gunning to rid them of this world. And so, again, this finale episode, all through the course of this series have we had a very tumultuous, emotional, unfolding story. Lots of action. Lots of reason to just champion and be fist-pumping at Nico and Warwick, and the unfolding drama that is taking place within and without Alex's life, her brother coming into the fore and being part of the Esmenettes, this rebuilt Esmenettes, as we now learn. and Marco's history with that, and that history apparently now affecting his life. You know, all this stuff comes full circle, and it seems like that's what's happening. And we end with this calmness before the storm, tentatively speaking. And it's that storm I can't wait to get to, and I hope we eventually will in another season. So I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of episode 12 of Gangsta. Again, the season 1 finale, and hopefully we will get announcements if it hasn't happened already and I've just missed it, you know, for season 2 come 2016. I'm desperately hoping that is the case, because this is a series that will be sorely missed. It's the first series probably since Death Parade, really, that got under my skin and made me feel so much of the weighty emotions, and before that, Kids on the Slope, stuff like that, along those lines, where I'm physically as well as emotionally going to be feeling depraved for not having it around. Next week, there's not going to be any episode, and I'm already in mourning over that. I'm already feeling that loss, and it's because of just how impactful this particular series is, the story and its characters. And I'm definitely going to be resounding from that loss. Unless I dip into the manga, you know, I've been very much giving heavy consideration to doing so, even though I don't want to go into a potential second season and be spoiled, so I may hold off on that for a time. But yeah, this has just been an incredible series. We left off with an incredible, you know, finale episode, and again, I'd love to hear from you guys what you thought of it. If you enjoyed it as much as I did, if not, why not? Let me know in the comments below. Love having the conversation with you guys. We can agree to disagree. Anything goes under the sun along those lines. And so yeah, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.